morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News Roundup, dateline 8th of April 2023. This week's headlines. Iran signals their determination to enforce hijab rules. Iran protest victims are shot in the eyes, but they hold on to their hopes. 20 Iranian schoolgirls are hospitalized with poisoning symptoms. The Al-Aqsa mosque suffers violence as Israeli police raid the Jerusalem holy site. A new capital lavish mosque angers Egyptians who are facing poverty. A former headmistress is guilty of child sex abuse in Australia. A French priest gets death threats after a sexy pole dance show held in his church. A report details staggering church sex abuse in Maryland. A liberal judge wins the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, flipping their ideological balance. And a cat jumps on an Imam as he is leading Ramadan prayers in Algeria. Authorities in Iran have been making clear their determination to enforce the compulsory hijab on women. This comes after months of protests demanding an end to the restriction. A hardline Iranian MP issued an ultimatum to the judiciary to come up with measures to put a stop to women flouting the rules on headscarves. But some women continue to defy the rules on wearing a mandatory headscarf in public. 2 women have been arrested after being attacked with yogurt, seemingly for not covering their hair in public. In the video, which went viral, 2 female customers are approached by the man who begins talking to them. He then takes what appears to be a tub of yogurt from his shelf and angrily throws it over their heads. Iran's judiciary said the 2 women have been detained for showing their hair, which is illegal in Iran. The man has also been arrested for disturbing the public order. See this video. Elahi Tavokolian was shot by Iranian security forces during protests in a northeastern city near Mashhad in September. The PhD student lost the sight in her right eye, but it was only 3 months later that she felt brave enough to share the video of her ordeal on Instagram. "You aimed at my eyes, but my heart is still beating," she writes in the post. "Thank you for taking the sight from my eye, which has opened the eyes of so many people. The light inside my heart and the hope of good days to come will keep me smiling. But your heart and your commander's heart are getting darker every day." Elahi recently left Iran and had major surgery in Italy to remove a bullet lodged in her head. She posted a video of herself on a hospital bed saying, "I'm going to live to narrate this." After the procedure, she told BBC Persian that she plans to exhibit the bullet in an international court in future. 20 Iranian schoolgirls were transferred to hospital in the northwestern city of Tabriz, an official said, after the latest in a wave of poisoning attacks that have sickened thousands of pupils across the country over more than 4 months. The head of the emergency service in West Azerbaijan province said the girls were treated after suffering shortness of breath. The official said the general condition of the students was good. The school poisoning occurred in Tabriz's Bagmishe town a day after Iranian schools had resumed classes following the Persian New Year break. Since November 2022, more than 5,000 students have suffered symptoms including nausea, fainting, headaches, coughing, breathing difficulties, and heart palpitations, with many requiring treatments in hospital. The attacks in more than 200 schools across the country have sparked fear and anger among schoolgirls, their parents, and Iranian society at large. After Iranian authorities announced arrests over the poisoning last month, UN experts criticized the Islamic Republic for failing to protect their schoolgirls, for failing to prevent further attacks, and for failing to conduct swift investigations. We fear that they are orchestrated to punish girls for their involvement in the movement, Women, Life, Freedom, and for expressing their opposition to mandatory hijab and voicing their demands for equality. There have been violent scenes as Israeli police raided the Al-Aqsa mosque in occupied East Jerusalem, saying agitators had barricaded themselves and worshippers inside. Palestinians said stun grenades and rubber bullets were used in the pre-dawn raid and that 50 people were hurt. Police said stones were thrown and fireworks had been fired at them in the mosque. Militants in the Gaza Strip later fired rockets at Israel, and its military carried out airstrikes in response. The latest violence comes just ahead of an overlap between the Islamic holy month of Ramadan and the Jewish Passover holiday. The Arab League is set to hold an emergency meeting to discuss an Israeli police raid on the Al-Aqsa mosque that left at least 12 Palestinians injured, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he was working to maintain the status quo at the holy site. See this video. Egypt has opened a record-breaking mosque in its new administrative capital city, but this has been widely criticized for the costs involved. It comes at a time when Egypt has been fighting soaring prices, with inflation running at just over 30% in March. The government has been building a new city in the desert to try to move people away from heavily congested Cairo, but the unveiling of the new center and mosque was criticized on social media. The new administrative capital of Egypt has been purpose-built 45 kilometers east of Cairo. Its new Islamic cultural center also includes the Grand Mosque, which covers more than 19,000 square meters and is capable of hosting 107,000 worshippers. The mosque cost 800 million Egyptian pounds, $25.9 million or 20.7 million pounds sterling, to build, and is the second biggest mosque in Africa. Egypt is facing deepening economic crisis. Its currency has lost half of its value against the dollar over the past year, causing inflation to reach its highest level in 5 years. The country has also been selling state assets to Gulf investors to help plug a widening budget deficit. Many people went to Twitter and Facebook to criticize lavish spending on religious places at this critical time, as millions of Egyptians struggle every day to put food on their table. One Facebook user posted, "Overspending, insanity and waste of money. The tallest pulpit, the heaviest chandelier, and people can't find anything to eat. Sell this chandelier and pulpit and the whole mosque if this will help solve our problem." An Israeli former head teacher has been found guilty of sexually assaulting 2 teenage students at an ultra-Orthodox Jewish girls' school in Australia. The jury in Melbourne found Malka Leifer had raped and indecently assaulted sisters Dassie Ehrlich and Ellie Sapper between 2003 and 2007, but it found her not guilty of abusing a third sister, Nicole Mayer. Leifer, 56, had pleaded not guilty to more than 24 charges and spent years fighting extradition from Israel. But in 2021, an Israeli judge ordered her extradition to Australia. The 6-week trial in Victoria's County Court heard evidence that Leifer was a revered figure at Melbourne's Adas Israel School, where the 3 sisters were students. They said they were abused by Leifer in locked classrooms at the school, on school camps, and at the head teacher's home. The abuse continued after they graduated and returned to the school as student teachers. A French priest has received death threats after a sold-out pole dancing performance that the local paper called Sexy was held in his church. A Baroque Music and Performing Arts Association, Passion Croisée, rented the church last week for 2 performances of Giovanni Battista Pergolesi's lyrical sequence Stabat Mater, which they combined with dance and pole dance acts. The Dernière Nouvelle d'Alsace newspaper said the pole dancing by the gymnast and former French pole dance champion Vincent Grobelny had been skillful, athletic, graceful, impertinent, and some would say sexy, and had left the audience gasping. The 1,000 tickets for the show had sold out very quickly, it noted. Daniel Boisenbacher, the priest at the Protestant Saint-Guillaume Church in Strasbourg, eastern France, told AFP he had alerted police to the threats after receiving 2 anonymous letters. The priest described the evening's program as flirtatious but soft, acknowledging that some didn't like it. One of the threatening letters said parishioners should be decapitated, saying, "This is not a church, it's a cabaret." The other said that the priest needs his head to be cut off because he handed the key to our holy church to a dancing serpent. Boysenbacher said copies of the evening's programme, annotated with remarks, included "You will die" or you're going to hell," had been found slipped under the church door. "We're used to getting reactions, but not to getting death threats," the 54-year-old said. "They won't deter me at all," he said. "I think the church needs to open itself up to the world." More than 150 Catholic priests and others associated with the Archdiocese of Baltimore sexually abused over 600 children and often escaped accountability, according to a long-awaited state report released on Wednesday that revealed the scope of abuse spanning 80 years and accused church leaders of decades of cover-ups. The report paints a damning picture of the Archdiocese, which is the oldest Roman Catholic diocese in the country and spans much of Maryland. Some parishes, schools, and congregations had more than one abuser at the same time, including St. Mark Parish in Catonsville, which had 11 abusers living and working there between 1964 and 2004. One deacon admitted to molesting over 100 children. Another priest was allowed to feign hepatitis treatment and make other excuses to avoid facing abuse allegations. The Maryland Attorney General's office released the findings of their year-long investigation during Holy Week, considered the most sacred time of year in Christianity ahead of Easter Sunday, and said the number of victims is likely far higher. The report was redacted to protect confidential grand jury materials, meaning that the identities of some accused clergy were removed. See this video.
Today, certainly in Maryland, is a day of reckoning and a day of accounting. In 2018, before I was Attorney General, the Office of the Attorney General launched a grand jury investigation into the Archdiocese of Baltimore. And what we learned is that the incontrovertible history uncovered by this investigation is one of pervasive, pernicious, and persistent abuse by priests and other Archdiocese personnel. It's also a history of repeated cover-up of that abuse by the Catholic Church hierarchy.
In a historic election, the Liberal judge Janet Protasevich won her race for a seat on Wisconsin's Supreme Court on Tuesday. Her win will flip the ideological balance of the state's highest court, which has been controlled by a conservative majority for 15 years. Elections and democracy observers have called this election the most consequential one of the year, with abortion rights, redistricting, and election rules at stake. The race pitted Protasevich, a Milwaukee Circuit Court judge and former prosecutor, against Dan Kelly, a former Wisconsin Supreme Court justice with ties to election deniers and the far right. Protasevich will replace the conservative justice Patience Roggensack on the 1st of August, and the court will be controlled by a narrow liberal majority. When the US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June last year, an 1849 law banning abortion went back into effect in Wisconsin. Abortion quickly emerged as a top issue in this race, with voters across the state mobilizing around the question of abortion access. A challenge to the ban is currently making its way through state courts and will probably end up in front of the state Supreme Court this year. During the race, Protasevich was open about her personal support for legal abortion access. Finally, a cat jumped on an Imam as he led Ramadan prayers. See this video. This week's Free Thought Hour guest is A.T. Ballans, author of Life, the Universe and Consciousness. Stay on this channel to find out what this is all about. And don't forget to watch Views on the News, our panel show about this very news. This has been Global Atheist News. The GAN team will be back next week. Thank you for watching.